Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Food Forest. Today's video is brought to you by Wren. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But I kind of like this sponsor because I can kind of talk about some of the projects they do and their permaculture related projects. So it's like it's a commercial inside the video, but it's kind of interesting anyways. I would probably want to do a video about these guys regardless. So what we're going to do today is actually go and talk a little bit more about rabbits because I've learned a few more lessons that those little furry guys have taught me. So let's get going. Good morning. Welcome back to the Food Forest. So today we're actually going to go around and we're going to look at where we're seeing rabbit activity. And what we're going to do is look at what kind of trees the rabbits are really enjoying, where they're biting, and more specifically what trees they're actually not bothering with. So any kind of more advanced older tree they really don't care about. They're really looking for that new growth. Now one thing I find is that every single year we always have a lot of rabbit traffic right in our raspberry patches, but we don't get a lot of damage in there. They actually don't really like eating the raspberries. They just like hiding and hanging out inside them. Or maybe they do nibble a little bit, but I don't notice because there's just so many different canes. However, one tree that they absolutely do love is apples. Now, this apple tree actually has a trunk protector on it, but it's buried under the snow and it clearly doesn't come up far enough. And you can see they come right across the swale. They hang out in here. These are some hascap bushes. And for the most part, they're leaving the hascaps alone. Just a little further down, they came over to autumn olive here. And they did take a little bit of nibbles of the autumn olive, but they looks like they took some and they kind of moved on from there. Now I should just mention this. Here's a trunk protector that's kind of from the store, and I figured it was good enough. But if there's no holes around your trunk protector, then water can get in and freeze right up against the trunk. Now, believe it or not, ice is actually a little bit better of a thermal insulator than water is. And the reason for that is that, when you freeze water, it actually expands. Everyone kind of knows that. And because the molecules are further apart, they actually transfer heat less readily than, say, water does. And this is why often, actually, orchardists will spray their fruit trees so that they get frozen water on it. And it actually acts as a protector for the buds in, say, early spring when you have a late frost coming in or a late freeze. It'll actually kind of protect the buds. It'll act as like a little protective layer. So the actual cold ice, this will actually hit 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius, and it really won't get too much colder than that. So if your winters get down into, the negative 30, negative 40 range, then actually having a protection of ice can potentially help the tree. Another apple tree, more severe damage all the way around. So I might have to replace quite a few trees this year and definitely learn my lesson to make sure that every single one of them not only has a collar, but has a collar, there's 2 feet of snow there and then, all the way up. Here's another great example of another apple. You can see that they've really selectively chosen the apples. So another apple, it's got probably about a 2-foot protector on it, and it just wasn't tall enough because you get 2 feet, 3 feet of snow buildup and you lose the part of the tree above. So another apple probably going to be gone this year. Here's a pear that basically got cut down last year, and I obviously didn't learn the lesson, and it regrew, and again, rabbits took the pear out. So apples, pears, and I'm also finding cherries. So pretty much any kind of stone fruit or anything related to apples. It could potentially be anything in the Rosaceae family, which would then expand it out further to some nut trees like pecans. But pretty much any of your common fruit trees are in the Rosaceae family, including roses themselves. But they really don't seem to pay any attention to stuff like service berries, for example, elderberries. They really don't seem to care about elderberries, haskcaps, sea buckthorn. So it's really icy. I want to be careful how much I'm walking around. There's a peach over there, and I put a trunk protector on it, and I remember when I put it on it, it had no damage at all. So I think that one was okay. There's a peach over here in this island guild. You can see it's got a trunk protector on it as well, and when I put that one on, it also had no damage. We do see a little bit of damage on the service berries here. I was scrambling around putting trunk protectors on trees before hockey and ran out of time, so I'll probably put some on this one today. But for the most part, they seem to kind of avoid the service berries. One tree that they really like, that I want to bring extreme attention to, because this is potentially a learning moment here, is the fig. So this is the fig that regrew. It's a Chicago hardy fig, so we actually cut it back down to the ground every year anyways, because this part of the tree will die. It's just too cold up here for the fig. However, it's great rabbit food in the meantime, and maybe a bit of rabbit deflection, kind of like a sacrificial tree for the rabbits. So you maybe put it right next to another tree that you want, and then the rabbits will actually preferentially eat the pear, or the fig, sorry. They'll preferentially eat the fig instead of your other fruit tree. So this is why you come out in the wintertime, to make little observations like this. I want to take a minute and talk about the sponsor of this video, which is a company called Wren. Wren is a simple and effective way to make a difference in the climate crisis that we face, but more importantly, they fund a whole bunch of projects that expand beyond just carbon, but also help with the natural ecosystem collapse that we're facing in the future. Once you sign up to make a monthly contribution to offset your carbon footprint, you receive monthly updates for the projects that you support. You get to see what your money's spent on, with photos and details of every tree that's planted, every acre that's reforested. The project that I want to draw attention to today is a community tree planting program in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. In this program, Wren engages TIST, which is an international small group of tree planting. And this is a program that's actually run by the participants. TIST hosts workshops and provides funding for the sustenance farmers in East Africa to plant and benefit from these trees. Farmers form small groups to support each other as they grow their new trees, and they get paid by the TIST program not only to plant the trees, but to also maintain the groves. And this is really, really important, because agroforestry is really tricky. You can plant trees today, but what if someone comes down and cuts them in 10 years? Farmers receive huge benefits from keeping the trees in the ground, ranging from direct revenue of fruit, fuel, windbreaks, and assistance in climate control and the creation of rain patterns. This program is not just planting pines and lines. It's not just planting trees, which is one of my biggest criticisms with tree planting programs. This program is actually creating diversity and planting to create a forest. And they also monitor it. So part of this project, they send monitors around called quantifiers, and they will literally go out and measure the diameter of the trees and the health of the ecosystem to make adjustments on how the funding is being spent. So if you want to help make a difference, go take a look in the description of this video and check out Wren. And the first 100 people who sign up using the link in my description will have an extra 10 trees planted in their name. That is 1,000 free trees. Okay, here we're in the lower orchard area. You can see that I've come down here before putting the trunk protectors on my pawpaws. I did that not because I saw any damage on them, but because they're just so important to me. I've never had a pawpaw yet. They're a cool kind of talking piece fruit. You know, when people come over here, have you ever tried a pawpaw? North America's largest fruit, that kind of thing. So I really want to make sure that these do okay. You can see I put a little bit of deer fencing around one of them that was getting eaten last year. So far, so good. We do see deer damage down a little further on some of the apple trees, but they haven't pushed up yet this year. And I saw no deer damage on any of these pawpaw, no rabbit damage on any of these pawpaws at all. So that's very good news. We've got some willow here as well, and I was expecting to see a lot of deer or rabbit damage on the willows because it's a great fodder crop. If you have goats and you want to give them some great healthy food that they really love, willow is a great example. This is a corkscrew willow here. So willows are great examples, especially weeping willows, because they'll kind of weep down and then ducks, goats can browse on them but not really damage the tree very much. So if you have livestock, definitely consider getting willow. I was expecting to see a little bit more willow rabbit damage, and potentially using those as a kind of sacrificial anode for my rabbits, but no rabbit damage on the willows. So that's interesting. So Lucy kind of can come all the way down here. We expanded how far their fence goes, and that way she can kind of hunt off and scare away the rabbits a little bit further into the wild. And then we planted more plants for them a little further out in the wild, stuff like those willows. But we might amend and fix that with figs now, just learning a little bit more about what trees the rabbits really like. I think we might really add some figs and maybe some wild apples. We'll definitely be collecting apples, apple seeds, and planting them all in our wilder areas. We'll do that this year, this spring. And speaking of that, we've got big plans coming up this year. My next video will probably discuss what things we're doing in here. A lot in here. We're doing other things with partnerships, trying to give you guys some promotions and deals, and things that align with the channel always. So I think the next couple videos will focus on highlighting some of these projects that we're doing, and we'll also talk about things that we're growing this year, things that we're planting this year, different trees that we're adding into the food forest, where we're expanding, that kind of thing. If you guys don't have your seeds yet, if you haven't started ordering trees, you definitely want to get on top of that and get started, because places are going out of stock very, very quickly. So make sure that you get whatever you need to do in terms of expanding your food forest this year. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you on the next one.